The massive arena on Nexus Prime buzzed with excitement. Thousands of alien spectators filled the curved seats, their voices creating a thunderous noise that echoed off the metal walls. Light panels cast bright beams down onto the sandy floor below, where blood stains from previous fights still marked the ground. Arena Master Vextar stood in his control booth, his forearms moving across different screens and controls. His scaled green skin reflected the glow from the monitors as he reviewed the day's schedule. The Krillian warrior had run gladiatorial games for over 30 years, and today promised to be special. "The Deathworld Challenge begins in 1 hour," announced his assistant, a thin blue creature with large black eyes. "All specimens are ready for combat." Vextar nodded, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. The consortium had spent months gathering fighters from the most dangerous worlds known to civilized space. Creatures that could tear through steel with their claws, beings that breathed poison gas, warriors that could survive in the vacuum of space. Each one cost a fortune to capture and transport. The rules were simple. Any slave who could survive 24 hours in the arena would earn their freedom and full consortium citizenship. It had never happened before. Most fighters died within minutes. "Sir, the crowd is asking about the human," the assistant said nervously. Vextar looked at the betting screens and laughed. The odds against the human surviving past the first hour were 1,000 to 1. The spectators were placing huge bets, thinking it would be easy money. "Let them waste their credits," Vextar said. "A human? From some backward planet called Earth? She will not last 5 minutes." Down in the holding cells beneath the arena, Kira-chan sat on a metal bench, staring at her hands. The 19-year-old human had been captured 3 months ago when raiders attacked her mining colony. They had killed her parents and taken her along with dozens of other workers to sell as slaves. The cell was small and cold. Gray walls surrounded her on 3 sides, with energy bars blocking the 4th. She could hear the crowd above, their alien voices growing louder as the time for fighting approached. "Human," called a guard, his voice harsh through the translation device. "Time to die." Kira stood slowly. She was not very tall, maybe 5.5 feet. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. The mining coveralls she still wore were dirty and torn. To anyone looking at her, she appeared small and weak. The energy bars flickered off, and 2 guards escorted her through narrow corridors. Their armor was thick and black, and they carried shock weapons. They did not seem worried about her trying to escape. "You know," one guard said to the other, "I almost feel bad for this one. She looks so young." "The crowd will love it," the other replied. "Quick and bloody, just how they like it." They reached a large metal door that led to the arena floor. Through the small window, Kira could see the bright lights and hear the deafening noise of the crowd. Her heart beat faster, but her face stayed calm. "Any last words, human?" the first guard asked, his tone mocking. Kira looked at him for a moment. "My name is Kira-chun. I was born on Earth in the Sol system. My people survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and 5 mass extinctions." She paused, her voice steady and quiet. "We did not survive all that just to die in your little game." The guards exchanged glances and shrugged. They had heard many last words before, and they all ended the same way. The door opened with a loud hiss, and Kira walked onto the arena floor. The noise hit her like a physical wall. Thousands of different alien species cheered and screamed from the seats above. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had multiple eyes or scaled skin. A few looked almost human, but their voices were all wrong. The sand beneath her feet was hot and coarse. The arena was circular, about 200 feet across, with high walls that curved up to the spectator areas. Several barriers and obstacles were scattered around the floor, meant to provide cover during fights. A massive screen above the arena showed Kira's image along with text in dozens of alien languages. The crowd's noise grew even louder when they saw how small and fragile she looked. "Welcome, beings of the Consortium." Vextar's voice boomed across the arena through hidden speakers. "Today we begin the Deathworld Challenge. 24 hours of combat against our finest champions." The crowd roared its approval. "Our first contestant comes from a recently discovered world in an outer spiral arm. The planet Earth. Designation: unremarkable. Gravity: moderate. Threat level: minimal." More cheers and laughter echoed around the arena. Several spectators threw things onto the sand near Kira's feet. "She will face 8 of our Scythic hunters," Vextar continued. "Magnificent predators from the death world Kethmer. Let us see how long this soft creature can survive." Gates opened on the opposite side of the arena, and 8 creatures bounded onto the sand. They looked like a cross between large cats and lizards, each one about 4 feet tall but 8 feet long. Their claws were as long as kitchen knives, and their teeth gleamed white in the arena lights. Lean muscles rippled under their dark scales as they spread out to surround Kira. The crowd fell silent, waiting for the slaughter to begin. Kira stood in the center of the arena, turning slowly to keep all 8 creatures in view. Her mining coveralls flapped slightly in the artificial breeze from the arena's air system. She did not look afraid. She did not look angry. She looked like she was thinking. The betting screens around the arena flashed as more wagers poured in. Every single bet was against the human surviving the first hour. Vextar leaned forward in his control booth, one claw hovering over the button that would start the fight. He had seen hundreds of condemned beings stand where Kira stood now. Some begged for mercy. Some screamed in fear. Some charged forward in desperate rage. This human just stood there, watching and waiting. "Begin." Vextar's voice echoed across the arena. The Scythic hunters moved forward, their claws clicking against the sand as they closed in for the kill. The first Scythic hunter lunged at Kira with incredible speed. Its powerful legs launched it through the air, claws extended and jaws open wide. The crowd leaned forward, expecting to see the human torn apart in seconds. But Kira was not there when the creature landed. She had dropped to one knee and rolled sideways, her small size letting her move under the hunter's leap. As the creature hit the sand where she had been standing, Kira sprang up behind it. Her hand struck the back of its neck in a precise blow that made a wet cracking sound. The Scythic hunter collapsed, its spine severed. It was dead before it hit the ground. The arena fell silent for a moment. Then the other 7 hunters spread out in a wider circle, their pupils narrowing as they reassessed their prey. "Lucky hit," someone in the crowd shouted. But the cheering was quieter now. Kira did not celebrate. She moved toward one of the metal barriers scattered around the arena floor. Her eyes never left the circling predators, but her hands felt along the barrier's base until she found what she was looking for. The barriers were held in place by heavy bolts. Bolts that had been loosened by years of impacts from previous fights. Kira's fingers, strengthened by years of mining work, found the loose bolts and began turning them. 2 hunters attacked at once from different sides. Kira pulled one bolt free just as they reached her. She threw herself backward over the barrier as the creatures collided with each other in the space where she had been. While they untangled themselves, Kira finished removing the second bolt. The barrier, which weighed several hundred pounds, was now only balanced in place. The third hunter came at her from the left. This time Kira did not dodge. Instead, she grabbed the loose barrier and pulled it down on top of the creature. The metal beam crushed the hunter's skull with a sound that made several spectators cover their ears. 3 down, Kira said quietly to herself. Breathing hard but steady, the remaining 5 hunters were more careful now. They had seen packmates die, and their predator instincts told them this prey was dangerous. They began to circle at a greater distance, looking for an opening. But Kira was not waiting for them to attack. She was studying them. During her years in the mining colony, Kira had learned about anatomy from the colony doctor. Human settlements on dangerous worlds needed people who could treat injuries from local wildlife. She had helped patch up miners who had been attacked by the native predators of her home planet. These Scythic hunters were similar to creatures she knew. 4 legs, forward-facing eyes, retractable claws. That meant their balance depended on their hind legs, and their power came from their back muscles. She picked up a handful of sand and threw it at the nearest hunter's face. As it blinked and shook its head, Kira ran straight at it. The creature tried to swipe at her with its claws, but she slid feet first between its legs like she was sliding into home base during a baseball game. Her boots connected with the back of the hunter's rear legs. The joints bent backward with a sharp crack, and the creature fell onto its side, unable to stand. Kira rolled to her feet and brought her boot down hard on the creature's throat. 4 down. The crowd was no longer laughing. Some spectators were shouting angrily at their betting screens as they watched their easy money disappear. Others were leaning forward, genuinely interested now in what the human would do next. In his control booth, Vexstar was frantically typing on his computer terminal. He pulled up the file on Earth that had been attached to the human's slave papers. The file was only 3 lines long. Planet, Earth, System, Sol, Threat Assessment, Low, Gravity, 1.2 Standard. Notes: Inhabitants show basic tool use. Basic tool use? Vexstar muttered, watching as Kira picked up a piece of broken metal from the destroyed barrier. What kind of basic tool use is that? On the arena floor, Kira was using the metal shard like a knife. The remaining 4 hunters attacked together, trying to overwhelm her. But the sand was now working in her favor. Her smaller feet gave her better traction than their claws, and she could change direction faster than they could follow. She cut the throat of the 5th hunter as it lunged past her. The 6th one caught her coveralls with its claws, tearing the fabric but missing her skin. Kira spun around and drove the metal shard deep into the creature's eye. 2 left. These last hunters were the largest and most experienced. They had learned from watching their packmates die. Instead of rushing in, they split up and tried to attack from opposite sides at exactly the same time. It almost worked. Kira managed to dodge the first one, but the 2nd hunter's claws raked across her back, tearing through her coveralls and drawing blood. She stumbled forward, and both creatures turned to finish her off, but Kira had stumbled towards something specific. During the fight, she had been working her way toward a particular spot on the arena floor, a spot where the sand was darker than the rest. She grabbed a handful of the dark sand and threw it at the nearest hunter's face. But this was not ordinary sand. It was sand mixed with the blood of creatures that had died in previous fights. Some of those creatures had poisonous blood. The hunter that breathed in the blood-soaked sand began to convulse. Its muscles locked up, and it fell onto its side, foam coming from its mouth. The last hunter hesitated, confused by what had happened to its packmate. In that moment of hesitation, Kira picked up one of the larger claws that had been torn off during the earlier fighting. She threw it like a spear, and it pierced the final hunter's chest. The creature took 2 steps forward and collapsed. 8 dead. 1 hour. Kira stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by the bodies of her opponents. Blood from the scratch on her back had soaked through her torn coveralls, but she was alive and standing. The arena was completely silent. 50,000 alien spectators stared down at the small human, who had just done the impossible. The betting screens around the arena had crashed. No one had programmed them to handle odds this extreme. In his control booth, Vexstar's hands were shaking as he typed new commands into his computer. He was no longer looking at basic information about Earth. He was trying to access the classified files, the ones that required military clearance. "Sir," his assistant said in a weak voice. The medical teams are refusing to enter the arena to collect the bodies. Vexstar looked down at the arena floor. Kira had moved to the center and was sitting cross-legged on the sand, surrounded by 8 dead predators. She was not celebrating or showing off. She was resting, like someone who had just finished the first part of a very long job. What are we dealing with? Vexstar whispered to himself. On his computer screen, a new message appeared. Access to Earth files requires threat level 9 clearance. Reason: Quarantine protocol active. Quarantine protocol. Vexstar had never seen those words before. Down in the arena, Kira looked up at the control booth and nodded once. Then she closed her eyes and began the plan for Hour 2. Vexstar's computer screen flashed red warning symbols as he tried to access the classified Earth files. His 4 hands moved frantically across different keyboards, entering security codes he had never needed before. "Sir," his assistant said nervously, "the medical team still refuse to enter the arena. They say the human is too dangerous." Dangerous? Vexstar looked down at the arena floor, where Kira sat peacefully among the dead hunters. "She is sitting still. Send them in to collect the bodies." "They won't go, sir." Head medic Talshore says she has never seen killing like that before. She says it was too clean, too precise. Like the human had studied exactly how to kill each creature. Vexstar's mandibles clicked with frustration. In 30 years of running the arena, his medical teams had cleaned up after battles against every kind of monster in known space. They had dealt with acid spitters, mind controllers, and creatures that could phase through solid matter. Now they were afraid of one small human? His computer finally accepted his security codes, and new information about Earth began to appear on the screen. But what he saw made his blood run cold. Planet Earth, Sol System. Reclassified threat level 9. Warning: Quarantine protocols in effect. Landing forbidden without full military escort. Threat level 9. Vexstar had only seen that classification twice before. Both times for worlds where entire exploration teams had vanished without a trace. He read further. Planetary gravity 1.2 standard, higher than 78% of known inhabited worlds. Atmospheric composition 21% oxygen, highly combustible. Extreme fire risk. Climate variable and extreme. Recorded temperature range -89 degrees Celsius to +70 degrees Celsius. Vexstar paused his reading to look down at Kira again. She had opened her eyes and was studying the arena's layout with careful attention. She seemed to be counting something, perhaps measuring distances. Historical data. Planet has experienced 5 major extinction events in the past 500 million standard years. Current dominant species evolved during the most recent ice age, approximately 200,000 years ago. 5 extinction events. Vexstar's own species had never faced even one planet-wide disaster. His world had been stable and peaceful for millions of years. Species analysis. Homo sapiens. Bipedal persistence hunters. Primary evolutionary advantages. Endurance, cooperation, adaptability, tool use. Tool use. That explained how Kira had turned everything in the arena into a weapon. But persistence hunters? Vexstar opened the sub-file to learn more. Hunting method. Humans chase prey across long distances until the prey collapses from exhaustion. The average human can run continuously for 2 to 6 hours without stopping. Some individuals recorded running over 100 kilometers without rest. Vexstar looked at his own legs, designed for short bursts of speed. He could run fast for maybe 10 minutes before needing to rest. The idea of chasing something for hours was terrifying. Cooperation. Humans form complex social groups. They share information, coordinate attacks, and support injured group members. They can teach learned skills to others, allowing rapid adaptation to new environments. Adaptability. humans can survive in almost any environment on their planet. They live in frozen wastelands, burning deserts, dense jungles, and high mountains. They can eat almost anything organic and have been observed eating food that is toxic to most other species. In the arena below, Kira had stood up and was walking slowly around the edge of the fighting area. She was not looking at the crowds or the cameras. Instead, she was examining the walls, the gates, and the ventilation grates near the ceiling. Vexstar opened another file. Military assessment. Human warfare is characterized by extreme violence and innovation. They create weapons from any available materials. Historical records show humans fighting with sharpened sticks, metal blades, explosive chemicals, and directed energy. They have been observed using environmental features as weapons, including fire, water, gravity, and weather patterns. Psychological profile. Humans become more dangerous when threatened. They do not surrender easily and often fight harder when outnumbered or injured. They form strong emotional bonds with their group members and will sacrifice themselves to protect others. Combat assessment. Individual humans are physically weaker than most known warrior species, but compensate with superior tactics, endurance, and unpredictability. They study their opponents and adapt their methods quickly. Human warriors have been observed learning new combat techniques during battle. Vexstar closed the file and looked at the arena's sensor readings. The temperature had risen slightly due to the arena lights, and humidity was increasing from the crowd's breathing. Normal environmental changes that happen during every event. But Kira was not reacting to these changes like other fighters did. She was not sweating or panting. Her heart rate, measured by the arena's medical scanners, was actually slower now than it had been when she first entered. She is resting, Vexstar realized with horror. The fight did not tire her out. She is preparing for more. On his communication panel, lights were flashing as messages came in from across the arena complex. Security teams were reporting unusual computer activity. Someone was accessing the arena's blueprints, guard schedules, and prisoner manifest. "Sir," his assistant said, voice shaking, "the computer technicians say someone is hacking our systems. They're trying to trace the source." Vexstar looked down at Kira, who was now standing near one of the air vents. As he watched, she reached up and touched something on the wall near the vent's cover. "The source is in the arena," Vexstar said quietly. "She's not just fighting. She's studying us." He opened another file. First Contact Protocols, Earth. Historical note. The Galactic Consortium made contact with Earth approximately 50 years ago. Initial exploration team reported hostile reception. Subsequent diplomatic missions also failed to establish peaceful relations. Status. Earth has been placed under indefinite quarantine. Humans are classified as a developing species with dangerous potential. Direct contact is forbidden except under special circumstances. Warning: humans should not be underestimated based on their physical appearance. They possess intelligence, creativity, and survival instincts that make them extremely dangerous when threatened. Final note. 3 separate military assessment teams have recommended that humans be left alone until they develop space travel naturally. Quote, "Do not wake the sleeping predator. When humanity reaches the stars, we want them to see us as friends, not as threats to be eliminated." Vexstar felt sick. He had put a human being in his arena as entertainment. A human from a quarantine world. A member of a species that his own government was afraid to. Contact dot, and now the human was learning everything about his facility's security systems, his communication. Panel chimed with an urgent message from Arena Security. "Sir, we've lost access to several security cameras. Someone has taken control of the arena's monitoring system." Vexstar looked down at Kira one more time. She was standing in the exact center of the arena again, but now she was looking directly up at his control booth. Even from this distance, he could see that she was smiling, though it was not a friendly smile. "Sir," his assistant asked, "should we send in the next group of fighters?" Vexstar stared at the human who had somehow become the most dangerous being in his arena. According to the schedule, Hour 2 was supposed to begin with 12 Mordak acid spitters, followed by 6 Tekkalon energy warriors. But the files on his computer screen told him that none of his arena champions had been designed to fight against something like this. His creatures were bred to kill other animals. They were not prepared to fight against an intelligence that could turn the arena itself into a weapon. "No," Vexstar said finally. "Cancel the next round. I need to think about this." "Sir? That human down there just taught herself our entire security system in 1 hour. What do you think she will learn in Hour 2? Despite Vexstar's desire to cancel the next round, he had no choice. The crowd was growing restless and angry. They had paid enormous amounts of money to see the Deathworld challenge, and many had lost fortunes betting against the human. Riot control teams were already moving into position around the arena as frustrated spectators began throwing objects onto the sand below. "Sir, we have to continue," his assistant said nervously. "The crowd is demanding the next round. If we stop now, they might tear the arena apart." Vexstar looked at his options. The original plan had called for progressively more dangerous opponents throughout the day, but those plans had assumed the human would be dead by now. "Send in the Morduk," he said finally. "But only 6 of them, not 12. "Sir, the protocols state, I don't care about protocols." Vexstar's voice rose to a harsh roar. "That human has already shown she can kill 8 trained predators. I'm not sending 12 acid spitters to their deaths, just to satisfy the crowd." On the arena floor, Kira heard the mechanical sounds of the gate mechanisms activating. She had spent the break between rounds not resting, but working. Using techniques learned from repairing mining equipment, she had carefully loosened several of the wall panels near the air vents. To a casual observer, the panels looked normal, but they would come free with the right amount of pressure. She had also used her torn coveralls to create simple tools. Strips of fabric became binding cord. Pieces of metal from the destroyed barrier became cutting edges. Even the sand around her feet had been carefully arranged in patterns that would give her better footing. The crowd cheered as 6 Morduk emerged from the gates. These creatures were different from the Scythic hunters. They stood upright like humans, but were twice as tall and covered in thick armor-like skin. Their most dangerous feature was the acid sacs in their throats, which could spray burning liquid across the entire arena. Kira did not wait for them to spread out. Instead, she ran directly toward the nearest wall panel she had loosened. The first Mordak opened its throat sac and sprayed acid in a wide arc. The burning liquid hissed as it hit the sand where Kira had been standing. But she had already reached the wall and pulled the loose panel free. The panel was large enough to use as a shield. When the second Mordak sprayed acid at her, Kira held the panel at an angle that reflected the liquid back of the creature's face. The Mordak screamed as its own acid burned through its eyes. "Impossible," someone in the crowd shouted. "She's using their weapons against them." But Kira was not finished. She threw the acid-covered panel like a giant throwing disc. It struck the third Mordak in the legs, and the creature fell forward into a puddle of its own acid. The remaining 3 Mordak tried to coordinate their attack, but Kira had already moved to a different position. She had noticed something during her study of the arena. The floor was not perfectly level. There were slight slopes designed to help blood flow toward drainage grates. She positioned herself at the top of one slope and waited. When the 4th Mordak sprayed acid at her, she rolled to one side. The acid flowed down the slope and pooled around the creature's own feet. The Mordak tried to move away from its own acid, but slipped and fell. The 5th creature was more careful. It tried to get close enough to bite Kira without using its acid spray. But Kira had torn another strip from her coveralls and soaked it in acid from the puddles on the ground. She swung the acid-soaked cloth like a whip, and it wrapped around the Mardak's neck. The creature clawed at the burning fabric, but only succeeded in spreading the acid across its chest. The last Mordak was the largest and most experienced. It had learned from watching its packmates die and decided to rush Kira and try to crush her with its weight. But Kira had been expecting this. She ran toward the creature as it charged, then dropped to her knees and slid under its legs, just as she had done with the Scythic hunters. But this time, she had prepared a surprise. As she slid past the creature's feet, she jammed a piece of sharp metal into the drainage grate directly behind the Mordak. The creature's own momentum carried it forward onto the metal spike. It died instantly. Hour 2, 6 more dead creatures dot in the control booth. Vexstar was receiving increasingly desperate reports from his staff. "Sir, the guards are refusing orders to enter the arena," reported his head of security. "They say the human has turned the fighting space into a death trap." "What do you mean, death trap?" "She's not just killing the creatures, sir. She's changing the arena itself. Look at the camera feeds." Vexstar switched his main screen to show different camera angles of the arena floor. What he saw made him understand why his guards were afraid. Kira had not simply fought 6 more opponents. She had used each fight to make the arena more dangerous for future enemies. Acid puddles now covered strategic locations, creating barriers that would limit where opponents could move. Loose metal pieces were positioned to serve as weapons or traps. Even the bodies of dead creatures were arranged to provide cover and concealment. "She's not just surviving," Vexstar realized. "She's claiming territory." "Sir," his assistant said, "the crowd is demanding bigger opponents. They want to see the Tekkalon warriors." Vexstar looked at the files for the Tekkalon. These creatures were covered in energy shields that could deflect most weapons. They had been designed to fight against advanced technology, not primitive tactics. "Send them in," he decided. "Maybe energy shields will stop her." But even as he gave the order, Vexstar was accessing new files on his computer. He was looking up information about human military history, trying to understand how his species might defend itself. If this human ever escaped the arena, what he found was not encouraging. Human military tactics. Humans excel at asymmetric warfare. When facing superior opponents, they use unconventional methods, including guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, and environmental manipulation. They often turn their enemies' advantages into weaknesses. On the arena floor, Kira was preparing for the next wave of enemies. She had noticed that the energy shields used by arena security created a specific type of electromagnetic interference. During her mining days, she had learned that certain metals could be magnetized by electromagnetic fields. She began gathering small pieces of metal debris and arranging them in specific patterns around the arena. To observers, it might look like she was just cleaning up the battlefield. But Kira was setting another trap. The gates opened and 4 Tekkalon warriors entered the arena. These creatures looked like walking suits of armor, each one glowing with the blue light of energy shields. Their weapons were built into their arms and could fire concentrated energy bursts. The crowd cheered, thinking these opponents would finally be too much for the human. The first Tekkalon fired its weapon. The energy blast struck the sand where Kira had been standing and turned it to glass. But Kira had already moved, and she was carrying something in her hands, thought it was a handful of the metal debris she had magnetized. As she ran past the second Tekkalon, she threw the metal pieces at its shield generator. The electromagnetic field caught the metal and pulled it into the shield projector's housing. The shield flickered and died. Without its energy protection, the Tekkalon was just a heavily armored creature. But armor that was designed to deflect energy weapons was not designed to handle acid. Kira led the unshielded Teclon into one of the acid puddles she had created earlier. She repeated this process with the other 3 warriors, using their own shield technology to destroy their defenses, then using the environment she had shaped to finish them off. When the last Teclon fell, Kira stood alone in an arena that no longer looked like a simple fighting space. It had become something else, a complex maze of hazards and weapons that she controlled completely. "Send in the guards," someone in the crowd shouted. "Make her fight the guards." But when Vextar looked at his security chief, the alien's face was pale with fear. "Sir, the men won't go in there. They've been watching her fight, and they know she's been studying them too. She knows their weapons, their tactics, even their patrol schedules. They're trained soldiers." "Yes, sir. Trained to fight other soldiers. Not trained to fight something that can turn a simple arena into—" The security chief gestured helplessly at the screens, showing Kira's transformed battlefield dot in the arena below. Kira looked up at the control booth again. This time, her smile was wider dot, and for the first time in 30 years of running gladiatorial games, Vextar was truly afraid. Hour 3 began with complete silence in the arena. The crowd had stopped cheering, stopped betting, stopped making noise of any kind. 50,000 alien spectators watched a small human woman sitting calmly in the center of what had once been a simple fighting space. The arena floor now looked like a battlefield from a war zone. Acid pools glowed softly in the artificial light. Metal spikes jutted from drainage grates. The bodies of 14 different creatures formed defensive walls and barriers. Loose panels and debris had been arranged in patterns that created hidden paths and ambush points. But the most frightening thing was how relaxed Kira appeared. She sat with her legs crossed, her hands resting on her knees, breathing slowly and steadily. She looked like someone meditating in a peaceful garden, not someone who had just killed 14 trained predators. "Sir," Vextar's assistant whispered, "what do we do now?" Vextar stared at his computer screen, where he had been reading human military history for the past hour. The more he learned, the more terrified he became. Humans had conquered their entire planet not through strength or natural weapons, but through their ability to adapt, learn, and turn any environment into an advantage. "They fought wars that lasted for years," he said quietly. "Some battles went on for months. They would dig tunnels under enemy positions, flood valleys to create barriers, even change the courses of rivers to gain advantages. Sir, this human has been in our arena for 2 hours, and she has already turned it into a fortress. What do you think she could do with 2 days? 2 weeks?" On his security monitors, Vextar could see guards stationed throughout the arena complex. They were all armed with advanced weapons and protected by energy armor. But he had read enough human history to know that superior technology did not guarantee victory against human tactics. The Vietnam War, he read from his screen. Human soldiers with simple weapons defeated an enemy with advanced aircraft, artillery, and chemical weapons. Duration, 20 years. His communication panel chimed with an urgent message. This one came from the prison levels below the arena. "Sir, we have a problem in the detention blocks. The other human prisoners are asking to speak with you." Other human prisoners. Vextar had almost forgotten about them. According to his records, the arena complex held 47 humans captured during various raids. They had been scheduled for sale in the slave markets after the Deathworld challenge concluded. What do they want? "They're requesting immediate release, sir. They say their friend in the arena has earned freedom for all of them." Vextar looked down at Kira, who was now standing and walking slowly toward one of the arena walls. She seemed to be examining something near the base of the spectator seating. "That's not how the rules work," Vextar said into his communicator. "Only the fighter earns freedom." "Sir, they're not making a request. They're making a demand." "And sir, They seem very confident that you're going to agree. Confidence. That was the word that had been bothering Vextar since this whole nightmare began. Kira had never shown fear, anger, or desperation. From the moment she entered the arena, she had acted like someone following a plan. "Bring me the complete files on all human prisoners," Vextar ordered. "I want to know who they are." While his assistant worked, Vextar opened a new communication channel to the arena floor. It was time to talk directly to the human, who had turned his entertainment venue into a demonstration of why her species was quarantined. "Human," his voice echoed across the arena through the speaker system. "Can you hear me?" Kira stopped examining the wall and looked up at the control booth. She nodded once. "Your performance has been impressive, but the challenge requires 24 hours of survival. You still have 21 hours remaining." Kira walked to the center of the arena, where she knew the main microphones would pick up her voice clearly. "Arena Master," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I think we both know this challenge is over. The rules clearly state. The rules assumed your creatures could kill me," Kira interrupted. "But they can't, and you know it." Vextar's mandibles clicked nervously. She was right, of course. He had already sent some of his most dangerous arena champions against her, and she had not just survived. She had made their attacks look easy. "What do you want?" he asked. "Freedom for all 47 human prisoners in this facility. Transportation to a neutral world where we can make contact with our own people. And a formal apology from the consortium for violating quarantine protocols." Vextar's assistant handed him the files on the human prisoners. As he read through them, his fear doubled, then tripled. Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist and chemical engineer. Marcus Rodriguez, former Earth Defense Force sergeant with expertise in explosives and demolitions. Lisa Park, computer systems specialist. David Kim, pilot and navigation expert. The list went on. The simple miners and colonists that his raiders had captured were actually scientists, soldiers, engineers, and specialists. And the woman in his arena was not just some random colonist. She was Dr. Kira Chun, daughter of the xenobiologist and a trained emergency medical technician with extensive knowledge of alien anatomy. "Sir," his assistant whispered, "if these humans work together..." Vextar understood. Individually, each human prisoner possessed skills that could be dangerous. Together, they formed a complete team capable of taking apart his entire facility from the inside. And Kira had known this the entire time. "You planned this," Vextar said into the microphone. "The arena fighting was never about survival. It was about getting our attention." "Partly," Kira admitted. "But mostly it was about showing you what happens when humans are threatened. My people have been trying to establish peaceful contact with the consortium for 50 years. Your government has ignored every diplomatic message we've sent. The quarantine protocols were designed to keep us isolated until you decided we were safe to contact. But quarantine works both ways. It also means you're not supposed to raid our worlds and capture our people." Vextar looked at his security screens. His guards were still in position, but they looked nervous and uncertain. They had signed up to control prisoners and maintain order, not to fight against humans who could turn anything into a weapon. "If I release the prisoners," Vextar said slowly, "what guarantee do I have that you won't use your freedom to attack consortium worlds?" Kira smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuinely friendly. "Arena Master, if humans wanted to attack consortium worlds, do you really think we would have waited for you to capture us first? We've been watching your ships for decades. We know where your bases are, your trade routes, your military installations. Then why haven't you attacked?" "Because we don't want to fight you. We want to trade with you, learn from you, maybe even become friends. But that can only happen if you treat us as equals, not as entertainment or property. Vexstar was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything he had learned in the past few hours. His computer screen still showed the military assessment files, with their warnings about human unpredictability and adaptability. But there was one line from the files that stood out more than the others. When humanity reaches the stars, we want them to see us as friends, not as threats to be eliminated. Sir, his assistant said nervously. The crowd is getting restless again. They want to know what's happening. Vexstar looked down at Kira, who was waiting patiently for his decision. Around her, the transformed arena served as a reminder of what she was capable of. But she was not threatening him or demanding immediate action. She was giving him time to make the right choice. Attention, citizens of the consortium, Vexstar announced over the arena's speaker system. The Deathworld challenge is hereby concluded. The human contestant has achieved victory through means that exceed the parameters of our competition. The crowd erupted in confusion and anger. But Vexstar continued speaking. Furthermore, all human prisoners held in this facility are to be released immediately and provided with transportation to neutral space. This action is taken in recognition of diplomatic immunity and in accordance with quarantine protocols that should never have been violated. Sir, his security chief's voice came through the communication system. The crowd is rioting. They demand their money back. Give them their money, Vexstar said tiredly. All of it. And send word to Consortium Command that I need to speak with them immediately. What should I tell them? Vexstar looked down at Kira one more time. She had not moved from the center of the arena, but somehow her presence filled the entire space. She represented something that the Consortium had tried to ignore for 50 years, a species that was ready to join the galactic community, whether the galaxy wanted them to or not. Tell them, Vexstar said slowly, that the quarantine has been broken, and that maybe it's time we started talking to the humans properly, before they decide to come looking for us themselves. On the arena floor, Kira-chan nodded respectfully toward the control booth, then walked calmly toward the exit gates. Behind her, she left an arena that would never be used for gladiatorial combat again, because everyone who had witnessed her performance now understood the same terrifying truth. Humans were not the ones who needed to be afraid of the galaxy. The galaxy needed to be afraid of what humans could become when they were pushed too far.